What happens when a billionaire's wife looks directly at Judge Judy and says the words that will haunt her for the rest of her life? What happens when a woman wearing $47,000 worth of jewelry tells the toughest judge in America that she clearly does not understand how people at a certain wealth level operate? This is the story of Carolyn Blackwell Harrington, a 45-year-old socialite who has never worked a single day in her pampered existence, who married into a real estate fortune 19 years ago and has spent every moment since treating the people who serve her like they are invisible. She walked into Judge Judy's courtroom wearing a custom Valentino suit and carrying an Hermes Birkin bag that costs more than most Americans earn in 3 months. She walked in expecting her wealth and her status to protect her from consequences, expecting a simple cleaning lady to be dismissed as a liar and a scammer, expecting to walk out victorious without so much as opening her designer wallet. But Carolyn Blackwell Harrington made the most catastrophic mistake of her privileged life. She assumed that Judge Judy had not done her homework. She assumed that her money would speak louder than evidence. She assumed that insulting the intelligence of a woman who has spent 35 years separating truth from lies in a courtroom would somehow work in her favor. She was wrong about everything. Because while Carolyn was rehearsing her condescending speeches and practicing her dismissive hand gestures, Judge Judy was spending the previous evening reviewing a manila folder so thick with evidence that it required rubber bands to hold it together. Court records, settlement agreements, Department of Labor findings, a pattern of exploitation so systematic and so deliberate that it would take Carolyn's carefully constructed world and burn it to the ground in front of 15 million viewers. The courtroom is packed on this Wednesday morning. The case description posted outside has generated unusual interest among the studio audience. A wage dispute between a wealthy homeowner and her former housekeeper sounds routine enough, but something about the energy in the room suggests that everyone senses drama building beneath the surface. The plaintiff, Maria Esperanza, sits at her table clutching a worn binder overflowing with documents, photographs, and printed text messages. She is 54 years old, wearing simple black pants and a white blouse that serves as the uniform for her small cleaning business. Her hands tremble slightly as she organizes her evidence, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally getting her moment of truth after months of being ignored, dismissed, and called a liar by a woman who owes her more than $8,000. Maria immigrated to the United States from Guatemala in 1993. She worked 3 jobs simultaneously for nearly a decade, saving every possible penny to bring her mother and younger sister to America legally. She put her daughter through nursing school. She built a small but respectable cleaning business that employs 4 other immigrant women, all of whom she pays fairly and on time because she remembers what it feels like to be exploited. She has spent 31 years building a life in this country, and she has never once failed to pay a debt, never once broken a promise, never once treated another human being the way Carolyn Blackwell Harrington treated her. The defendant arrives 17 minutes late, which tells everyone watching exactly how seriously she takes these proceedings. Carolyn sweeps into the courtroom like she is arriving at a charity gala rather than a legal hearing. Her honey blonde hair is perfectly styled. Her makeup has been professionally applied. Her jewelry catches the studio lights with every movement. Diamond earrings that cost more than a new car. A tennis bracelet featuring stones the size of small pebbles. An engagement ring so ostentatious that it seems designed specifically to remind everyone in the room that she married extremely well. She is carrying the Birkin bag in the crook of her arm like a trophy, like evidence of her superiority, like a shield that will protect her from whatever is about to happen in this courtroom. She does not acknowledge Maria's existence as she takes her seat at the defendant's table. She does not make eye contact with anyone in the gallery. She checks her phone with an exaggerated sigh, texting someone rapidly before the bailiff asks her to silence her device. She rolls her eyes at this request, making a show of reluctantly dropping the phone into her bag, as if being asked to follow basic courtroom rules is an unbearable inconvenience. Every aspect of her body language communicates the same message. She believes she is better than everyone present. She believes her wealth entitles her to different treatment. She believes this entire proceeding is beneath her dignity and will be resolved quickly in her favor. Judge Judy enters and takes her seat at the bench. She has been doing this for 35 years, first as a family court judge in New York, and then as the host of the most successful courtroom television program in history. She has seen every type of liar, every manipulation tactic, every arrogant defendant who assumed their status would override evidence. Her instincts for detecting deception have been honed through tens of thousands of cases, and those instincts are screaming warnings about the woman sitting at the defendant's table. The designer armor, the practiced dismissiveness, the way she has not even glanced at the plaintiff since entering the room. Judge Judy has seen this type before. Wealthy people who believe their money makes them untouchable. Privileged people who view workers as invisible servants unworthy of basic respect. Arrogant people who think they can lie their way out of any situation because it has always worked before. Carolyn does not know. What she failed to research before strutting into this courtroom is that Judge Judy spent considerable time last night pulling public records, court documents, settlement agreements, Department of Labor findings, every piece of documentation that exists regarding Carolyn Blackwell Harrington's history with domestic employees. The thick manila folder sitting on Judge Judy's bench contains information so devastating that it will systematically destroy every lie Carolyn is about to tell. Judge Judy opens the case file and reviews the basic information. Mrs. Harrington? She begins, her voice carrying its usual authority. Ms. Esperanza claims she worked as your personal housekeeper for 2 years and that you owe her $8,700 in unpaid wages for the final 3.5 months of her employment. How do you respond to this claim? Carolyn waves her hand dismissively, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Your Honor, I manage multiple properties with extensive household staffs. People come and go constantly. Housekeepers, gardeners, personal assistants, contractors. I cannot possibly be expected to remember every single person who has passed through my homes over the years. It is simply unrealistic to expect that level of detailed recall. Judge Judy removes her glasses slowly, a gesture that anyone familiar with her courtroom recognizes as a warning sign. So you're confirming that Ms. Esperanza did work in your home at some point? You are acknowledging that much? Carolyn realizes immediately that she has made a tactical error. Her recovery attempt is clumsy and transparent. What I am saying, Your Honor, is that many people work in my various residences throughout any given year. This particular woman, she gestures toward Maria without actually looking at her. I have no specific recollection of her whatsoever. She may have been part of some cleaning crew that visited occasionally, but a 2-year employment relationship? Absolutely not. That is a complete fabrication designed to extract money from someone she perceives as wealthy. Judge Judy turns her attention to Maria. Ms. Esperanza, what evidence do you have that you worked directly for Mrs. Harrington as her personal housekeeper? Maria opens her binder with careful, practiced movements. Her voice is nervous but determined. Your Honor, I have extensive documentation. I have photographs of myself working inside her Greenwich mansion, photographs that are time-stamped and geotagged. I can identify specific rooms, specific artwork, specific furniture that only someone who worked in that house would recognize. I have text messages from her personal phone number giving me detailed cleaning instructions over a 2-year period. I have a schedule showing I worked every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening. And I have testimony from her neighbor's housekeeper, who saw me arriving and leaving regularly for the entire duration of my employment. Asterisk. She hands copies of everything to the bailiff, who passes them to Judge Judy. The photographs are clear and damning. Maria in the massive marble-floored kitchen with its professional-graded appliances. Maria in the library with distinctive floor-to-ceiling mahogany bookshelves and a rolling ladder. Maria in the master suite with the custom Italian chandelier that was featured in a prominent design magazine 3 years ago. Every photograph is time-stamped. Every photograph shows Maria, actively working in spaces that only someone with regular access could have entered. Carolyn laughs, and it is the most condescending sound imaginable. The kind of laugh designed to make the person hearing it feel small and foolish. Your Honor, with all due respect, you have probably never managed a household staff of this complexity. These photographs could have been taken anywhere. Anyone can save a phone number under a fake name and claim it belongs to someone important. Anyone can take pictures inside a home during a real estate showing or a charity event. This proves absolutely nothing. Judge Judy puts her glasses back on and stares at Carolyn with an expression that would freeze a volcano. Mrs. Harrington, I have been practicing law since before you learned to walk. I have managed cases involving millions of dollars, international custody disputes, and matters of life and death. I have seen more evidence and evaluated more testimony than you have attended cocktail parties. So please, do try me. Carolyn does not recognize the danger she is in. She continues in that same patronizing tone, seemingly incapable of modulating her arrogance, even when self-preservation should demand it. I simply mean that people who operate at a certain economic level handle these matters differently than what you might typically encounter in a small claims environment. Managing domestic staff, handling payroll for multiple properties, dealing with various household employees across different residences. It is complicated. These situations are rarely as simple as someone claiming they are owed money. There are nuances that require sophisticated understanding. Judge Judy's voice becomes quieter, which is always more dangerous than when she raises it. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Harrington. Please continue with your testimony. I am fascinated to hear more of your sophisticated perspective. Maria presents additional evidence. She shows the text messages on her phone, scrolling through dozens of them spanning the full 2 years of her employment. Maria, please ensure the guest bathrooms are absolutely spotless by Thursday evening. We are hosting the Hendersons for dinner, and Ellen is very particular. Maria, use the special Italian marble cleaner on the foyer floor, not the regular product. The regular one leaves streaks. Maria, I need you to arrive at 6 instead of 7 on Saturday. We have the charity committee meeting at 10, and the house must be perfect. Every message is detailed, specific, and clearly from someone directing an employee with intimate knowledge of the household's schedule and standards. Judge Judy examines the messages carefully. These communications span 2 complete years. Mrs. Harrington, very specific instructions about your home, your schedule, your preferences, your social engagements. You're telling me you have no memory of Miss Esperanza at all? No recollection of the woman who received all of these detailed instructions from your personal phone? Carolyn shifts uncomfortably in her designer suit but doubles down on her denial. Your Honor, I am an extremely busy woman with significant social and philanthropic obligations. I often delegate communications to my personal assistant. Sometimes my household manager handles these matters using my phone. The existence of text messages proves nothing about who actually sent them or whether this woman worked for me in any consistent capacity. Maria holds up another document. I have a check from you, Mrs. Harrington, from 2 years ago exactly. $1,700 for my first month of work. After that first month, you insisted on paying me in cash. You said it was simpler for everyone. You said you preferred not to deal with the paperwork involved in formal employment arrangements. I trusted you. I needed the work desperately. My mother was sick and the medical bills were overwhelming. So I agreed to the cash arrangement, even though something felt wrong about it. Judge Judy examines the check carefully. This check is indeed drawn on your personal account, Mrs. Harrington, made out to Maria Esperanza, dated exactly 24 months ago. The amount matches what Ms. Esperanza claims was her monthly wage. Carolyn's attorney attempts to intervene, sensing disaster approaching, but Carolyn cuts him off with an imperious wave. She is absolutely determined to handle this herself, convinced that her status and her confidence will carry the day. Your Honor, clearly you do not understand the tax optimization strategies that people at my wealth level commonly employ. No offense intended, but presiding over small claims disputes probably has not exposed you to sophisticated financial planning and household management techniques. Cash payments are extremely common in domestic employment situations. It is actually beneficial for both parties involved when properly structured. The courtroom goes completely silent. Even the court reporter pauses her typing. Did this woman just tell Judge Judy that she does not understand financial planning? Did she just imply that Judge Judy's professional experience is too limited to comprehend how wealthy people operate? Did she just admit to systematic cash payments while simultaneously denying the employment relationship? Judge Judy removes her glasses again and sets them on her bench with deliberate care. So you are now admitting that you paid her in cash specifically to avoid reporting these wages to the Internal Revenue Service. That is what you are telling me. Carolyn's face flickers with the first hint of panic as she realizes she has walked directly into a trap. I am saying that the cash payments she claims never happened because she never worked for me in any consistent capacity that will require regular compensation. This is entirely her word against mine. And frankly, Your Honor, you are taking the word of a cleaning lady over the word of someone with my standing in the community. That should tell you something about how this case is being handled. Judge Judy leans back in her chair, and that slight smile appears on her face. The smile that experienced viewers recognize as the calm before someone gets absolutely demolished. I am taking evidence over arrogance, Mrs. Harrington, but please continue digging this hole you are standing in. You seem to be enjoying the excavation process. Carolyn's confidence remains inexplicably intact despite every warning sign that she is heading toward disaster. She genuinely believes that her wealth, her status, her designer clothing, and her social connections will carry more weight than Maria's binder full of documented evidence. Your Honor, let us examine this situation realistically, she says, her voice dripping with condescension. This woman worked in my home, if she worked there at all, as casual labor with no formal employment arrangement. There was no contract, no written agreement, no official documentation establishing an employer-employee relationship. She is attempting to claim I owe her significant money based entirely on her own self-serving assertions. Where are the tax records documenting her employment? Where is the proof of consistent payment? None of it exists because this alleged employment relationship never existed in the manner she is describing. Maria speaks up, her voice steadier now despite her nerves. Mrs. Harrington, you specifically told me not to report the income. You said it would be simpler for both of us. You said you had many employees across your various properties, and it was easier for everyone to handle domestic payments in cash. You promised me that you would always pay on time, that I could trust you. I believed you because I needed to believe you. I needed that job. Carolyn laughs again with that same dismissive, superior sound. Your Honor, now she is claiming I instructed her to commit tax fraud. This is absurd. She is compounding her lies with additional lies. I never told her any such thing because I never employed her in any meaningful capacity. She is fabricating an entire employment history out of thin air and hoping you will believe her simply because she seems sympathetic. Judge Judy holds up her hand to stop the exchange. Mrs. Harrington, before you entered my courtroom today, what research did you conduct about me? About my background? About my career before this television program? Carolyn looks genuinely confused by this question. Research? Your Honor, this is small claims court over a dispute about cleaning services. I did not think I needed to prepare an extensive dossier. I am simply here to defend myself against fraudulent claims from someone hoping to exploit my financial resources. Judge Judy's smile grows slightly wider, and there is something almost predatory in her expression now. That might have been your first mistake, Mrs. Harrington. That might have been the most significant mistake you have made today. And you have made quite a few. Carolyn continues her testimony, completely oblivious to the catastrophe that is rapidly approaching her position. Your Honor, I want to be absolutely clear about my stance in this matter. Maria Esperanza claims she worked consistently in my home for 2 complete years. She claims I paid her cash for most of that period. She claims I now owe her $8,700 in unpaid wages. All of these claims are categorically false. I have never employed this woman in any official capacity whatsoever. She may have been part of a cleaning service that visited my property occasionally, but I have no direct relationship with her, no memory of hiring her personally, and certainly no legal or moral obligation to pay her anything. She is attempting to scam me because she knows I have substantial financial resources and she believes I will settle rather than endure the inconvenience of litigation. But I refuse to be extorted. I refuse to be taken advantage of by someone who thinks wealthy people are easy targets. And I will not pay this woman a single dollar. Judge Judy nods slowly, taking careful notes. So your official testimony given under oath in this courtroom is that Maria Esperanza never worked directly for you as your personal housekeeper? That is your final and definitive position. Carolyn straightens her shoulders with renewed confidence. That is absolutely correct, Your Honor. I know who has and has not been employed in my household. I am completely certain of my testimony. This woman is lying and attempting to defraud me. I am telling the truth. The situation is that straightforward. Judge Judy sets down her pen and folds her hands with deliberate calm. It is that straightforward. Interesting choice of words, Mrs. Harrington. The tension in the courtroom has become almost unbearable. Maria sits at her table looking nervous but hopeful, her evidence binder open in front of her. Her cousin Lucia, sitting in the gallery behind her, is gripping the bench so tightly her knuckles have turned white. Carolyn continues to look smugly confident. Her attorney, however, has developed an expression of growing alarm, sensing something his client is too arrogant and self-absorbed to notice. Judge Judy reaches beneath her bench and produces a thick manila folder. The folder is at least 2 inches thick, stuffed with papers and held together with multiple rubber bands. She places it on her bench with a soft thud that somehow resonates through the silent courtroom like a thunderclap. Mrs. Harrington, do you have any idea what this is? Carolyn glances at the folder with obvious disinterest. I have absolutely no idea, Your Honor. Is it supposed to mean something to me? Judge Judy begins removing the rubber bands with slow, deliberate movements. This folder contains court records, public records, documents that are freely available to anyone who takes the time to research a defendant before they walk into a courtroom. I pulled these records last night while you were presumably selecting which designer outfit would best communicate your superiority. I have been reviewing them carefully while you have been sitting here insulting my intelligence and explaining how wealthy people operate in ways I could not possibly understand. Carolyn's face changes almost imperceptibly. A flicker of uncertainty crosses her features for the first time. What kind of records are you referring to? Judge Judy opens the folder and removes the first document. Let us begin with the most recent one. In 2022, a woman named Patricia Morales filed a wage claim against you with the Connecticut Department of Labor. Does that name mean anything to you, Mrs. Harrington? Carolyn's hand moves to her throat, touching her diamond necklace with sudden nervousness. That situation was a misunderstanding that was resolved privately between the parties. Judge Judy extracts another document. Was it resolved? Because according to the official Department of Labor findings, you paid Patricia Morales entirely in cash for 8 months of domestic work, then stopped paying her completely while she continued working for you for an additional 4 months. When she filed her wage claim, you settled for $14,500. The official finding specifically states that you engaged in a documented pattern of paying domestic workers off the books to avoid employment taxes and formal employment obligations. Carolyn's attorney finally attempts to intervene, recognizing the disaster unfolding before him. Your Honor, that previous case was settled with a confidentiality agreement. It should not be relevant or admissible in these proceedings. Judge Judy looks at him over her glasses with an expression that makes him physically shrink backward. Counselor, your client just testified under oath that she has never had employment problems with household staff, that she has no history of disputes with domestic workers. These public records suggest a dramatically different reality. I am establishing a clear pattern of behavior which is entirely appropriate in assessing credibility. Now sit down and stop interrupting. She pulls out another document from the seemingly bottomless folder, and Carolyn's complexion has shifted from confident to ashen in a matter of seconds. But there is considerably more, Mrs. Harrington. In 2020, you were sued by another domestic worker named Carmen Reyes for unpaid wages. You settled that case for $16,000 to avoid trial. The case file, which I reviewed in detail last night, describes the exact same pattern of behavior. You hired her, paid her cash for several months to establish a relationship, then simply stopped paying while expecting her to continue working. When she finally complained and threatened legal action, you fired her immediately and claimed she had never actually been your employee. Does any of this sound familiar? Carolyn's voice has lost its confident edge. It sounds shaky and defensive now. Your Honor, those were complicated situations that have been taken completely out of context. My husband's legal team handled those matters. I was not directly involved in the specific details of those settlements. Judge Judy's voice cuts through the courtroom like a blade. Your husband's legal team, Mrs. Harrington. You just spent the last 30 minutes telling me that you personally manage your household staffs, that you handle the hiring and firing decisions, that you make all the choices regarding your domestic employees across multiple properties. You described yourself as a sophisticated manager of complex household operations. Which version is accurate? Are you the hands-on estate manager you claim to be? Or are you simply a woman who hides behind her husband's money and lawyers when your exploitative behavior gets publicly exposed? Carolyn opens her mouth, but no words emerge. Her attorney places his hand on her arm, desperately trying to signal her to stop talking, but the damage has already been done and continues to compound. Judge Judy is not finished. She pulls out yet another document from her folder. And here is my personal favorite discovery from last night's research. 8 months ago, you settled another wage dispute. This one involved a woman named Lucia Esperanza. You paid her $12,000 to avoid going to court and having the matter become public record. Carolyn's voice is barely a whisper. That is a different Esperanza. Different person entirely. Judge Judy's voice rises with controlled fury. I am fully aware that it is a different Esperanza. Lucia Esperanza is Maria Esperanza's cousin. She warned Maria about working for you. She specifically told Maria that you were a serial wage thief who systematically exploits immigrant women who desperately need work. But Maria needed the job anyway because she had bills to pay and a sick mother requiring expensive medical care. Judge Judy holds up a printed text message exchange. Maria has text messages from Lucia saying, and I'm quoting directly here, "Do not work for Mrs. Harrington under any circumstances. She will not pay you. She did the exact same thing to me and to others before me. She uses people and throws them away." End quote. Maria took the job despite this warning because she was desperate and she hoped that somehow her experience would be different. It was not different. It was identical to what happened to Lucia and Patricia and Carmen and who knows how many other women you have exploited. Over the years, the courtroom is so silent that the hum of the air conditioning sounds like a roar. Carolyn is breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling rapidly beneath her Valentino jacket. Her diamond earrings, which seemed so impressive when she entered, now look obscene in the context of what is being revealed. Judge Judy continues, her voice filled with barely contained fury. Let me tell you exactly what I see when I look at this evidence, Mrs. Harrington. I see a deliberate, calculated, systematic pattern of exploitation. You specifically target immigrant women who desperately need employment, women who may not fully understand their legal rights in this country, women who are afraid to challenge wealthy people because they believe the system will never side with them, women who are vulnerable and can be manipulated. Asterisk, she taps the folder with her finger. You hire these women and pay them cash for a few months, which they appreciate because they need immediate income for their families. Then, once they are dependent on the job and have arranged their lives around the work schedule, you simply stop paying while expecting them to continue showing up. You know that most of them will not sue because they are terrified of the legal system, worried about immigration complications, scared of someone with your money and connections and lawyers. And the few who do find the courage to take legal action, like Carmen and Patricia and Lucia, you settle quietly with confidentiality agreements designed to bury the evidence of your behavior. Then you move on to your next victim with your pattern intact. Carolyn is crying now, her carefully applied makeup beginning to streak down her face. Your Honor, please, I can explain all of this if you will just give me a chance. Judge Judy slams her hand on the bench with a crack that makes half the courtroom jump. Explain what exactly? That you are a serial wage thief? That you have built a pattern of exploiting vulnerable women who clean your toilets, wash your floors, scrub your marble countertops, and make your privileged life comfortable? That you commit tax fraud by paying people under the table to avoid your legal obligations as an employer? Which part of this would you like to explain, Mrs. Harrington? Carolyn's voice becomes desperate, grasping at any excuse that might provide cover. The cash payments were their idea. They wanted to be paid in cash because they did not want to report the income for their own tax reasons. I was actually doing them a favor by accommodating their preferences. I was helping them, not exploiting them. Judge Judy's face displays pure disgust. So now you are throwing these women under the bus as well. Now these hard-working women who cleaned your home are the criminals in this scenario. You are not only a liar and a thief, Mrs. Harrington, you are also willing to destroy the reputations of vulnerable people to save yourself from accountability. How remarkably convenient that every single woman who has ever worked for you just happened to demand illegal cash payments. That every single one of them is lying about you owing them money. The coincidence is truly extraordinary. Maria is crying silently at the plaintiff's table, but these are tears of vindication and relief. For months she believed she was alone in this fight. She thought no one would believe a cleaning lady over a wealthy socialite with expensive lawyers and social connections. She thought her evidence would be dismissed and her claims ignored because she is an immigrant who scrubs floors for a living. Judge Judy pulls out the final document from her devastating folder. And here is the official investigation summary from Patricia Morale's Department of Labor case. Let me read you the finding that the state agency reached after reviewing all available evidence. Mrs. Carolyn Blackwell Harrington engaged in a deliberate and systematic pattern of exploiting domestic workers by hiring them without proper documentation, paying them in cash to avoid employment taxes and legal payroll obligations, then terminating their services without providing final payment when they requested the compensation they had rightfully earned. This behavior demonstrates willful disregard for labor laws and a calculated effort to take advantage of vulnerable workers. That is not my personal opinion, Mrs. Harrington. That is the official finding of a state government agency with investigative authority. Judge Judy closes the folder and looks directly at Carolyn with an expression of absolute contempt. You walked into my courtroom this morning wearing your designer clothes and your expensive jewelry and carrying your status handbag, and you made the fatal mistake of assuming I was stupid. You assumed that because Maria Esperanza cleans houses for a living, she was not intelligent enough to document her case properly. You assumed that because I am a television judge, I would not be thorough enough to pull public records and research her history. You were catastrophically wrong on every single count. Carolyn is sobbing openly now, her carefully constructed appearance completely demolished. Mascara streams down her face in dark rivulets. Her designer suit is crumpled from her heaving shoulders. Her hands shake uncontrollably. Your Honor, please. I made mistakes. I did not mean to insult you. I was simply trying to defend myself against what I believed were false accusations. My husband is going to be absolutely furious when he learns about all of this. Judge Judy leans forward with ice in her voice. Then you should have considered that before you decided to build your comfortable lifestyle on the backs of women you refused to pay fairly. You should have thought about that before you walked into my courtroom and insulted my intelligence while committing perjury under oath. You should have thought about consequences at some point during the past decade of exploiting vulnerable workers, Mrs. Harrington. But thinking about consequences clearly is not something you have ever been required to do. Until today, Carolyn makes one final desperate attempt. Your Honor, what if we settle this matter right now? I will pay Maria whatever amount she wants. Double the original amount, triple it. I will write a check this moment, and we can make this entire situation disappear. Judge Judy's laugh is sharp and completely devoid of humor. Now you want to settle. After you spent 45 minutes claiming Maria never worked for you, after you called her a liar and a scammer and a fraudster trying to exploit your wealth, after you suggested she was attempting to extort money from you because she perceives wealthy people as easy targets. Now that I have exposed your documented pattern of systematic fraud, suddenly you are willing to pay. That is not how my courtroom operates. Mrs. Harrington, you do not get to commit perjury under oath and then purchase your way out of accountability. When you get caught in your lies, Maria stands a little straighter at the plaintiff's table. And when she speaks, her voice carries a strength that was not there at the beginning of this case. Your Honor, I do not want triple payment. I do not want anything beyond what she legitimately owes me. I worked for that money. I earned every dollar through hard physical labor. I cleaned her house for 3.5 months while she invented excuse after excuse about why she could not pay me. My mother needed medication. I needed to pay rent. My employees needed their wages so they could pay their own bills. But Mrs. Harrington needed another handbag, another piece of jewelry, another vacation. She had money for everything except paying the woman, who scrubbed her floors on her hands and knees. Judge Judy nods with visible respect for Maria's dignity. Ms. Esperanza, your conduct throughout this proceeding has been exemplary. You arrived prepared with comprehensive evidence. You told the truth consistently. You did not exaggerate or embellish your claims. You simply asked for exactly what you earned through honest work. That is all any worker should ever have to do. She turns back to Carolyn with her voice becoming formal and final. Mrs. Carolyn Blackwell Harrington, I find in favor of the plaintiff, Maria Esperanza, in the full amount of $8,700 in documented unpaid wages. Furthermore, I am awarding Ms. Esperanza an additional $8,700 in punitive damages for your malicious conduct. Your established pattern of worker exploitation, your perjury in this courtroom, and your attempt to destroy this woman's credibility through false accusations. That is $17,400 total. Due immediately. The courtroom erupts in whispered reactions and audible gasps. Carolyn's face transforms from pale to completely gray. $17,000. Your Honor, that amount is excessive. That is punishing me beyond what is reasonable or proportional. Judge Judy holds up her hand to silence her. I am nowhere near finished with you. Mrs. Harrington, I am referring this case to the Internal Revenue Service for criminal investigation into your systematic tax fraud involving multiple domestic employees over a period of years. Based on the documentation in this folder, you have deliberately avoided paying employment taxes on numerous workers, which constitutes federal tax evasion. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the Connecticut Department of Labor for investigation into your ongoing pattern of wage theft. They may choose to pursue criminal charges which carry penalties including substantial fines and potential incarceration. Finally, I am ordering that this judgment and all evidence presented today become part of the permanent public record with absolutely no confidentiality provisions. You have concealed your exploitation behind sealed settlements for far too long. Mrs. Harrington, it is time the public learns exactly who you are and what you have done to vulnerable workers who trusted you. Carolyn collapses into her chair, her entire body convulsing with sobs. Her attorney has given up entirely and is packing his briefcase with the expression of someone preparing to flee a disaster area. Maria stands tall at her table, tears of relief streaming down her face as 31 years of hard work and perseverance are finally validated. Judge Judy looks at Maria with something approaching warmth. Ms. Esperanza, you did everything correctly. You documented your employment meticulously. You preserved your evidence carefully. You found other victims and assembled a compelling case. You refused to be intimidated by wealth or status or designer handbags. You should be immensely proud of yourself, and I hope you use a portion of this money to celebrate with your family, because you have demonstrated the most important lesson anyone can learn. Truth and persistence always defeat arrogance and deception. Maria's voice is thick with emotion. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for believing me. I was so afraid no one would believe a cleaning lady over someone like her. Judge Judy's expression softens just slightly. Miss Esperanza, I did not believe you because you seemed sympathetic. I believed you because you brought comprehensive evidence. That is what justice requires. Evidence, not emotions. Documentation, not desperation. You understood that principle. Mrs. Harrington never did and never will. She looks one final time at Carolyn, who is still sobbing into her manicured hands. Mrs. Harrington, let me leave you with this thought. You had every possible advantage in life. Wealth beyond imagination, educational opportunities, social connections, legal resources, and you used those advantages to systematically exploit women who had none of those things. Women who scrubbed your floors and cleaned your toilets and made your privileged existence comfortable. You could have been a good employer. You could have paid fair wages and treated workers with basic human dignity. Instead, you chose to be a thief and a liar, an exploiter of vulnerable people. That is not a mistake or a misunderstanding. That is a fundamental character flaw, and character flaws are considerably harder to correct than legal problems. The $17,400 you owe is insignificant compared to the debt you owe these women in terms of basic human respect. Get out of my courtroom. We are done here. As the bailiff calls the next case, Carolyn stumbles out of the courtroom, clutching her Hermes bag against her chest, her designer life in complete ruins around her. Maria walks out with her head held high, her cousin Lucia embracing her tightly in the hallway. The video of the case goes viral within hours, shared across every platform with headlines celebrating Judge Judy's systematic demolition of an arrogant, wealthy defendant. Within 48 hours, it has been viewed more than 35 million times. The comments are unanimous in their verdict. Justice served. Karma delivered. Never insult Judge Judy's intelligence. Because documentation always defeats arrogance, evidence always overcomes entitlement, and the truth, meticulously gathered and courageously presented, always wins.